It might seem like I'm just walking down a random street in London, and that is actually true. But I'm also here at the Rose Lippmann building to visit Playniac Games, as they are putting on a public playtest of their upcoming game, Insane Robots. We're going to meet Rob, who is the founder of Playniac. Hi Rob.
Hello.
Hello, hi, how you doing? Hi, this is definitely the first time we've met today.
It is.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
So my name's Rob Davis. I'm the founder of Playniac, which is an indie games studio in London. Right now we're playtesting Insane Robots, which is our strategy game coming out on PC, Xbox and PlayStation. Insane Robots has a card battler at its core, where you're powering up the circuits of your robot, you're powering up the defense, the attack. You have to complete circuits for them to be active. And then you're also doing kind of sneaky moves on the enemy robot. You might be hacking them or glitching them or swapping tokens around between your slots so that you steal a token that they've got and give them a bad token that you've got. And then you've also got hidden moves you do, which are called boosts. So you place a boost on your robot and no one else can see that, and that gives you extra attack and defense strength. But also as you progress in the game, you unlock these special boosts, and there are 7 of them in the game, and they do really unexpected things in attacks. So that means if you get attacked, actually all of the attacker's energy also bounces back and hits them, but you didn't know that was they didn't know that was going to happen. Or you've got a decoy where they're about to attack you and a load of rabbits jump out and the attack doesn't happen. So there's lots of unexpected moments that happen in the battles. And then those battles you can be playing against human players locally, 2 controllers on the sofa, or online multiplayer. We've got a ranking system so that we rank everyone and you unlock robots as you go up in rank. But also we sit those battles within these survival arenas. The game's been described as Hunger Games meets Hearthstone, but we're also describing it kind of unofficially as FTL meets Uno.
Right.
And that's the kind of roguelike system that we've built in the arenas, where in this world, malfunctioning, or robots that the leader thinks are malfunctioning, are placed in these survival arenas where they have to battle to the death. And so you have to get through these arenas, use the environment, avoid or chase enemy robots. You might use stealth, you might use a jetpack to evade getting attacked. There are shops where you can buy upgrades. There are 100 different upgrades you can put on your robot. Actually, I think it's more like 120 now, different upgrades. There are all these story events you discover that gradually reveal the lore of the world and quite what's happened and the history of the environment that you're in, which has been there for a long time. There are all different locations you go to, so you're in ice arenas, you're in desert arenas, you're in jungle arenas, you end up in lunar arenas and underwater arenas. Robots don't rust, we've discovered.
So yeah, like the top, that strategy layer is a bit like Civilization. It's got the sort of the what are they, like hexagonal.
So we have a hex-based map to give it its true full term, and so that's where you can move around, and there's things you can do, like you could use a teleport to jump around. There's hazards that might chase you as well. So
is that in the multiplayer as well?
The map part is in the single player campaign only.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
So the map part, what the map part gives you, there's a set of tournaments. There are 9 of them, and each one of those is like a roguelike system in itself. So you don't have to survive all of them with 1 life, but if you die within one of those tournaments, you're back to the beginning of that tournament. Okay. And any power-ups and features that you added to your robot in that tournament, you lose, but your robot goes back to where it was at the start. So we've kind of broken up roguelike into a set of separate challenges.
Yeah, which is nice.
And the idea is that you power up all your different robots and you grow their capabilities and you take them all through the tournament, the different tournaments, and then there's a finale, which we haven't spoken about, but there's the final showdown tournament at the very end.
Last big old tournament. Mm-hmm. I like that. It's interesting that you tried trying to break up a whole game over periods. You can have setbacks instead of a complete total wipe.
Yeah, we felt like, I mean, that total wipeout, permadeath, suits some games, and it suits certain kinds of play when individual plays are very quick and short, and it didn't suit what we were trying to build with Insane Robots. So we've kind of done it's a set, exactly as you say. It's like a setback. You might have unlocked something really cool and then you lose it because you die in that arena, but you haven't lost everything. You've still got what you started that arena with, and but those arenas are all random and they're all generated randomly, and the hazards you might face are random. When you get to the end of one arena, you get a choice between 2 new ones, and you get some choice over what hazards and what possibilities you find in that arena, and that's interesting.
It might play into how you spec your robot, right? So that, like, if you know that you're going to be better at water, or if if you know you've got that SP, you know, you've got your rust factor on, like, that's fine.
So for example, there is a weight belt and there are currents in the water.
Okay.
And if you've got a robot that's equipped with the weight belt, you're not going to be affected by the current, so you've got more control over your movement in the underwater levels.
Yeah, because one thing we know about robots is they're really light in general. You know, they're made out of metal, so they just float around.
They're quite.
So
ours do just get pushed around, so you get shoved. The currents just shove you across the whole map. Yeah, never underestimate the strength of the sea. Because
you've got a single player with upgrades and sort of elements that help you gain a bit of an advantage. How did that affect balancing the game? Because obviously in multiplayer you're not going to have that, are you?
So in a single player campaign, you have a set of robots that you gradually unlock and you power them up individually to survive in the survival arenas. So you might give them more health or more augment slots or more specific augments that they need. Actually in the so that's all about you learning what those augments can do and learning how they affect the strategy of your battles. In the multiplayer, you don't actually equip that yourself. So what happens is robots are given a similar level of power of augments, but those are randomized.
Okay.
So in the multiplayer, it's about dealing with what you're dealt. So you're given a set of augments, and what you need to do at the start of a multiplayer round is look at what they've got, look at what you've got, and decide how that's going to affect your strategy. And it balances as fair because we know the power of the different augments, and they're randomized. And also, you're going in a multiplayer battle, you're going to do 3 battles, so you're going to get 3 hands of augments. What we don't do, and what we designed out of Insane Robots, is CCG. You don't customize your deck, you don't design your deck. The deck is the deck you play with, and everyone has the same deck. So we wanted to make sure that that wasn't part of the design of the game. We wanted to make sure that deck customization wasn't something you needed to spend a lot of time doing. It's because robots, when you own robots, you own robots. We're not selling card packs, we're not expanding with card packs. We're not trying to do that kind of collectible card thing. The game is the game. When you own the game, you own the game. So we didn't need to do that, and we quite liked the idea of not having people spend a lot of time customizing cards and looking and having to buy card packs. I just want to play the game. I don't really want to look at individual cards and swap them around. So that's why we designed it out of the game, and we've made a game that plays in that way, but you don't have to do that.
It doesn't necessarily lend itself to being sort of something that can be appreciated in a really short burst as well, because it's got quite a deep strategy layer. But do you have any concerns, like, in terms of people not getting it, or has that just been proven?
So exactly as you say, it's not a game that it's immediately clear what it does when you first see a screen, but it's a game that we've been very careful to communicate from the first moment you play it. So it's actually very easy to pick up, and we've kind of iterated the first few minutes and the first 10 minutes of play so that people know exactly how they're supposed to play and what to do. But as you say, it's quite a strategic game, and quite a lot of it is about solving the challenges that the game presents, and they're random. So every tournament that's generated is random generated. You don't know quite what's going to happen, and that's a lot of the fun of playing the game, is kind of working out what's going on and seeing what you can do. And you need to understand a little bit of the game already to do that. When we've showed it at festivals, we've kind of found that people go through the first part and they get quite into it, and then they either want to carry on doing the single player part, or they want to jump into 2-player skirmishes, because you can play against a friend and do a 2-player battle, and people really like doing that.
To that, you are bringing this sort of narrative as well, aren't you? So it's not just a strategy roguelike with sort of that is only focused on the mechanics, because you've got quite a sort of tongue-in-cheek story. What's that about?
Interestingly, we started playing with narratives and writing those kinds of stories in the early part of 16 and late 15, and we were really writing stories about a leader who rules a world that's broken, and your robots are the robots that have realised that all is not as it seems and are trying to resist and overthrow him. And the world is built on a foundation of lies, and so it was kind of quite interesting that over the course of
the real world,
over the course of that year, well, no, it was inadvertent. So over the course of that year, we started to see the real world kind of changing slightly and looking a little bit more like some of what we'd said in the game, but that was totally inadvertent.
He's not happy there. He's happy there, but he's not happy there.
Originally, the game started. We started making the game as a tabletop card game.
Did you start off thinking it was going to be a game, or did you just start off trying to make something physical and then realise it was good for a game? Or
we started with the intention to make the computer game, and working with tabletop and physical and handmade stuff and improvised stuff is very much part of our design process. And we use that as a way to discover interesting mechanics, discover new kinds of fun in a game. And I'm very keen, coming from my background being as a programmer, where I know that anything you want to make takes a long time to make, I'm really keen on the methodologies that enable you to get a pen, get a paper, get some scissors, make something, play it, see what works, throw it away, try something else, play it, see what works. Iterate it just by drawing on the bits of paper, and then you've got a new game. And you've changed rules in moments. You've changed rules around a table just by agreeing that the rules have changed. And that's so much quicker a way to design a game than spending a month programming a feature and playing it and seeing if that works. So that's very much part of my methodology and our studio's methodology, is to design work in that way. And we did that over a year before we started programming any of this game. We were doing the tabletop part, and that's why we know we've got a really neatly designed, multiply iterated core battle game at the center of Insane Robots. The rest of the game in a way spreads out around that as a kind of roguelike system around it, but the core battle system has been developed over such a long time using those techniques, and that's how we know that it's fun and that it works. But that's a method that we use for all the productions that we do.
How closely do they resemble each other then from the card game?
How closely does the physical game?
Yeah, have you made a lot of changes
game
since you've transitioned, or is it pretty much you had the card system before it ever hit any numbers?
So if you'd asked me at the beginning of the design process if the physical game and the digital game would be really similar, I probably would have said yes, and that's totally wrong. So as soon as you go into digital, everything changes, and it was very useful to do that informed by the physical design process, but so much changes when you're working in digital, and it's really interesting what changes and why it changes. But you need to end up with a game that is absolutely native to digital and takes all the advantages of the digital space and does all the things that you want to do with that. So really I would say that starting to build the game at the start of 2015 was very much the start of a digital design process, which was like phase 2 of the whole design. A lot of things did come over, but entire parts of the game were remade, were reinvented, and that's quite necessary and very much benefits the game, understanding what those things are and why they need to change. Quite a lot of people have worked on the game overall. So there have been several developers, including myself. Then there have been several writers, there have been quite a few artists. Artists include Catherine Unger, who built a lot of the original content of the game, and she's worked on things like Snipperclips and Detective Grimoire and Haunt the House. So that's the launch title on Nintendo Switch. Then Karen Teixeira, who is a fantastic illustrator, who illustrated our 100+ story events that happen in the game. And Belinda Lung, who's designed lots of the robots in the game. We now have 46 different robot designs in the game that include things like a bird from a cuckoo clock.
There's a cat.
There's a cat.
Yeah, my cat.
There's a bear who has a tattooed tear. Your cat? Is that the character you've played?
I played the cat, yeah.
Yes. And Belinda's worked on things like Pokemon, and Fran Court, who's worked on things like Hue and Stealth Inc. And she designed a little bit of robot and some of the UI of the game as well. So that's the fantastic art team. As I say, three different developers have worked on the game at different times.
Are these people that are outsourced?
So both in studio, so we have a small in-studio team, and then we've also got people working remotely as well. So overall about 15 people have worked on the game. The 3 writers, James Wallace has done lots of tabletop games. Charlie Carter is an LSBU graduate who started quite early on working with us on the game, and Yasmin Khan has written on Fallen London, and she did some of the very early writing on the game, although the amount of writing in the game has blown up quite a lot since then. We have quite a lot of written content in the game.
Do you sort of have an idea of exactly how much?
I do, there's 35,000 words in the game, so I think that allows us to call it a novelette.
Oh really?
Apparently, yeah.
That's brilliant, a novelette. It's a surprisingly big team for, a relatively small title. Do you think there's more room now for that sort of mid-tier studio where because you're outsourcing, you're able to have a much bigger team, and therefore take on a bit more, scale up your concepts? That's
really interesting. I think it's really about bringing in the skills that your game needs, and I think some of that is about recognizing what skills you need at what times and what's going to most benefit the game you're making. This is a larger, deeper title than perhaps your average smaller game. So that's why we've had that number of people working on it. There's a lot of content in there. There's a lot of features in there. There's a lot of stuff to discover in the game, and there's 16+ hours of gameplay in the single player campaign, plus online multiplayer, local multiplayer, and a quick battles mode as well. So there's lots of stuff in there, and we needed to bring in specific skills.
What other games did you design with the physical template then?
Other games that we've designed with that approach include International Racing Squirrels, which is a game that we initially made with Channel 4. It's a race management sim. Yeah. It's about running a squirrel racing team in the global squirrel racing scene. And you train up your team of expert squirrels, and they do scudo, which is a squirrel martial art, which improves their focus in races, and they do weightlifting and they do running, and they become better and better squirrels. And you also buy them kit to upgrade them, and then you take them off to races in all kinds of locations around the world. And off the world as well. So that was a game that we also modelled as a tabletop game, and we took it to the pub and we played it with people, and we had people sit around and throw dice and play the game, and we absolutely used that approach as well before we started the digital build of that game as well.
Was that your first title?
No, I've made lots of titles working with clients as well as our independent titles. And so that started off as a collaboration with Channel 4. Yeah. This production is completely independent, and then we've also made games as a work-for-hire studio, working with clients to make games for them. So we tend to use those kinds of approaches across all the productions really, but it's different depending on the game. So some games might have a deck of cards, or some games might have levels laid out with paper, or some games might get made with Lego, or some games we go straight into a digital prototype because the system is complex. It really varies, but you're always looking for ways to get a sense of the play and the fun and the feel of the game without any interface, without any art, without any visual design. And it kind of goes back actually, one of the references for that is a point made by the guy who made World of Goo in a talk he did at GDC a few years ago, where he's talked about working on the game he was making after World of Goo, and he realised that the way to design it was to make totally wireframey kind of versions of the game and not get distracted at all by visual style. And he abandoned the game he made after World of Goo because he did that, and he realised that there wasn't fun to be had in the first system that he designed, and that made him iterate onto the next design. So I kind of thought, if a designer as good as that is kind of realising that this is a way to understand the space of the game he's making, we can learn a lot from using similar approaches to that.
So you've put games on console before, have you?
This is our first console release.
What's that been like?
It's fantastic to work on those platforms and to have partners at Microsoft and at Sony. It's definitely added quite a lot to what we have to do to release on those platforms as well as on PC only. So on PC we're releasing for Windows and for OS X. We've taken on quite a lot to do that, but it's been really exciting to bring the game to those platforms and to bring it out. We're basically simultaneously releasing it on 4 different platforms.
That's pretty soon, so obviously there's a run.
There's a lot to do right now. So what we're doing today is we're playtesting the game. It's a really good chance to see what happens when people play all the way through from the beginning to the end, although actually no one has completed the whole game because it's about 16 hours plus to complete the full game experience in the single player mode. So yeah, we're seeing what happens as people kind of go really far into the game, and it's a good way to find out if there are any last minute bugs remaining, although the game's in pretty good shape, and also just to get a sense of what's working well, what we can tweak, improvements we can make, features that we might change, that kind of thing.
When you're working with the client, do they get like a final say on creative decisions, or is it really a handover to you?
So we have had a lot of design freedom in the games that we've made, but this is one of the first games that we've fully independently made as a digital game. We do actually have history of making an independent game that came out as a book. So I started running a game a few years ago when I was asked to do a talk about game design in a pub as part of an event called Bright Club. And what I ended up doing was thinking, well, I'm not going to do a talk about games, I'm actually going to run a game and make the audience the game system for the game. And I first did that in 2010, and then that's been something that has just kind of run, and I've ended up doing in lots of different places and at lots of different events fairly worldwide. But what it is it's a game where the audience is the game system, and the audience then also redesigns the game. It's a game about redesigning the game. It's a game for crowds of people. It doesn't have any computers in it. So another theme of my design process has been, what can you do before you bring computers in? And so Cat on Your Head is really an example of seeing how far you can go with the idea of making games and designing games before you actually have to lock them down and program them.
So you get the audience to sort of decide on how the game changes. It sort of sounds a bit like, I've played drinking games like this where people add their own rules.
So Cat on Your Head is a game for a crowd of people.
Yeah.
From 15 to 1,000 people.
Okay.
It's been played with that full range in different events.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And so it's been run, this is a game that's currently been run in New York, in Berlin, in San Francisco. It's been played under the Golden Gate Bridge. It's been played at conferences and festivals and events worldwide. It's been played in classes and on game design courses worldwide. And it was just played in the Solomon Islands, and it was just been played in New Zealand for the first time. And so we constantly kind of get tweets saying, we're running your game somewhere, we're running it here, we're running it there. And we've made it fully available. There's a PDF book and there's a physical book that's available at catonyourhead.com. And so we've just made that fully available to anyone who wants to download it. There's a free version as well. Anyone who wants to download it and play it can pick up the game. It's intentionally quite a silly game. It's not that serious. It's not that serious, is it?
I mean, could it be serious?
So there's room for the game to be played in any way possible. And yeah, I think a really serious cat on your head would be a really fun. Like, you'd have to be just really serious looking and very po-faced as you play it.
Yeah, which I always am.
That would be an interesting remix. So one of its spiritual homes is a festival called Game Camp that happens in London roughly every year. And that audience is really good at like inventing whole new versions. And I think last time they played it in total silence, miming the characters in the game. Okay. And the year before they played it with their eyes closed while spinning around on their spots.
So what are the characters in the game? How's it
work? There's often a cat and there's a mouse.
Okay.
Quite often, but that also can change. So what happens is you play the basics game, but then the rules are up for grabs and the audience just kind of runs with it and introduces the sardine smart bomb or cat on your head apocalypse or cat on your head in the dark or the lorry that will run over one of the characters or the owl that patrols around the edge. And it's all done literally in the room live, and you can invent a new feature and just make it happen. And then we have a book that explains how to do it and how to get the game started, and has a load of the variants that were invented by audiences worldwide. This is the meta game, the meta version. So we're actually, we had one festival that talked to us about could they try and break the record and do the biggest ever one.
Right, okay.
And that hasn't happened yet. So Shut Up and Sit Down have covered it a couple of times, and they organised one with 200 people at an expo that was, I didn't get to go to, but it looks really fun.
Oh, that's a shame. You did that, but then you've taken on other work with clients to sort of, I'm guessing that was so that you had the sort of financial backing to then do your own thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, Cat on Your Head was an interesting project because it was little bit like doing a digital game release. It's just that we happened to make it as a PDF and a physical product. But it was actually quite a good kind of training ground for releasing a digital game. But our client work has been what's funded the studio and enabled us to make Insane Robots as well. So that's how we funded making the game. And we're actually developing it ourselves, and we're fully publishing it ourselves as well. We got some exciting publishing offers at various stages, but in the end we've decided the best thing for us in terms of releasing the game was to do it ourselves. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can make next. Obviously, right now we're getting Insane Robots out the door and getting that done and dusted and released, and then we'll be taking the same design philosophy, and we've already got a few new games that we want to look at making, and we'll see what we make next, and be applying the same approaches to design, probably simulating stuff using all different kinds of methods, and seeing what's fun and what we can make next. And for Playniac, it's about kind of continuing to make interesting stuff. We want to be making interesting games that people see and think, I haven't seen that before, games that have new mechanics in them, games that have new systems in them, and innovating in that way, really. That's the goal for the studio.